Hi, welcome to another edition of the Alan Rosenberg Show. I'm excited about this one because I'm going to be talking about the newest Jethro Tull release, Ian Anderson, Jethro Tull, the Zealot Gene. Now, I've had this album for months. This is the deluxe edition and the hardback. I've been listening to this album pretty steady for months. I've probably heard it around 15 or 20 times. That's the kind of thing that I like to do. I know it's cool to review an album as soon as it comes out, but I never really understood the point. Because maybe you heard the album once or twice. I need to let an album marinate. I need to take an album in. And sometimes albums, the first time you hear them, you get kind of underwhelmed and then they grow on you. And this is one that's like this. This album has grown substantially to me, and I think it's fabulous. So let's talk about Jethro Tull's newest release, the Zealot Gene. Now, of course, if you're a Tull fan, you know the story. This is the first Jethro Tull album since, 2003. The Jethro Tull Christmas album. Before that, in 1999, the last real Jethro Tull studio album, which was jtull.com. Before that, in 93, the great Roots to Branches album. So it's been a long time for a Tull record. But of course, Ian Anderson's been fluctuating between Tull and Ian Anderson solo for quite a while, and he's hugely prolific. I mean, he had released this one, Tab 2, Thick as a Brick 2, which I think is a masterpiece. This album was a top 3 album for me the year that this came out. This is a fantastic record and really could have been under a Tull name, in my opinion. And he did Homo Eroticus, which was good. I mean, they're all good. He did Jethro Tull the String Quartets. And then he toured with Thick as a Brick, live in Iceland, and plays the orchestral Jethro Tull. Ian Anderson is prolific, but he really started going deep into solo around 2000 with this masterpiece, The Secret Language of Birds, which is a beautiful acoustic-based album. He followed it up with Rupee's Dance, which is a fine record as well. He did Divinities, and it all started back in Walk On Into Light, which was his first solo record, which was electronic. So Ian Anderson is a workaholic. He just works himself to death. So it was a major decision for him to release this album as a Jethro Tull album. Why? Well, he says that, most of the guys in this band, if they were Jethro Tull, it'd be one of the longest lasting band. There's over 30 members of Jethro Tull, so, that whole can of worms. He's certainly entitled to call it Jethro Tull. This is a heavy-going album. Tull's always had great artwork. The artwork on this one's strange. Some people call it Nosferatu. I get it. But, it goes with the title, The Zealot Gene, where, in today's world, it's black or white and very little gray in the middle. So it definitely goes with the theme of this record. It's a definite concept record. This is the deluxe edition, which is well worth the money. I will talk about that. But just to give you a little preview, personally that would have been a better album cover because there's a lot of biblical references throughout it purposely. He talks about the album, what it's about, photographs of them recording. A lot of it was recorded as a band, and that's why he says he wanted to release it as a Tull record. They played together in the studio for a lot of it. Although a lot of it, the latter stuff is acoustic, but that's still very Tull. Track notes on each song and some photography from Ian Anderson. This is a great deluxe package. It's well worth the extra money because you get the regular CD, you get an acoustic CD of demos, which is just Ian Anderson playing the tracks on acoustic guitar. It sounds like it's in your living room. It's fantastic. Looks like that. You get rough demos of each of the songs, plus one little bonus. And towards the end of it, they're guide demos where he actually talks to the musicians, said, we're going to do this, I want this. So it's really interesting. You're a fly on the wall. I pretend he's in my living room playing acoustic, and it's great. And you could hear all the little guitar licks and riffs that, he does, and in the songwriting, which he then brings to the band. And there's a 5.1 surround mix of the album on Blu-ray, which is good too. So this album is heavy going. You know, he is an amazing lyricist, always has been. He's a very serious guy, as you know. What does he write in here? He writes, you know, he takes bits and pieces from the Bible and then he fleshes it out in the song lyrics. And these songs take strong emotions as ideas to expand upon. There are stories of loyalty, compassion, tolerance, and love, but then there are also tales of rage, vengeance, envy, greed, and treachery to cope with. The occasional fear mongering does not sit well with me. Um, I think we have, as part of our human condition, an inner rage which defines so much of our identity. Implanted in almost all of us is the tendency to get mad about some subject we are obsessed with. We are too easily open our doors to indoctrination by pious cant and corrosive partisan political extremism. Well, straight from the words of Ian Anderson, that's what this album is about. And it's heavy going. But every song is catchy. Every song has a great guitar lick, which is something to catch on to. It's a great mixture, like classic Tull albums. You got some really riffy tracks. Mrs. Tibbetts, the first one's a good, typical kind of Tull riff track about Mrs. Tibbetts' son, who's the guy who's flying the Enola Gay, dropping the atomic bomb, and don't think about what you're doing. Pretty amazing. Jacob's Tale has a harmonica, acoustic tune with a harmonica, which is really tasty. Mine is the Mountain. Well, that's the one epic on there. I think it's the closest track on this album to a classic. Great track. Basically, God is a vengeful God, and you got this miserable Moses going up the mountain to talk to this vengeful God who's a jealous God to get the Ten Commandments to bring it down to his people. Pretty cool, powerful track. The Zealot Gene, great riffy tracks. Ashana Sleeping. Sad City Sisters, great acoustic track. Just a lot of good riffy tracks. A Betrayal with Joshua Kahn, great riff. Kind of like Jesus knows that he's going to get stabbed in the back by one of his followers. Betrayal. A couple of great acoustic tracks at the end. I like the sequencing of the album. The sequencing at the end, you got these acoustic tracks. We had Saturday Go, really nice track. Three Loves Three, great acoustic track. And In Brief Visitation, another beautiful acoustic track. He did those, obviously, after the rest of the album with the band, but it fits perfectly because your classic Tull albums have a mixture of acoustic Ian Anderson solo, pretty much, plus the band. So it's great. And The Fisherman, what's the name of that? Ephesus also ends it with a more riffy, full band sound. So what's the controversy, I guess? Well, what's the elephant in the room? Do you miss Martin Barre? Obviously, the guitarist in Tull, the longest standing member, obviously, besides Ian Anderson. Barre was on every Tull album except for the first one. So he had a huge run. Do you miss him? Honestly, no. When you listen to this album, Florian, who was the guitarist with Ian Anderson and Tull for a really long time since Martin Barre, is a monster player. I mean, he just has some great runs. Listen to Mrs. Tibbetts, the first song. He's got some great wah-wah, shredding soloing in there. You don't miss Martin Barre, in all honesty. I mean, would I like Martin Barre to be in the band? Sure, we all would, for nostalgia purposes. From a musical standpoint, you listen to this album, you're not saying, God, I wish Martin Barre was in there. I will tell you that I've heard this album so many times, and I love it. I think it's going to be a huge hit for me. I would expect it probably at the end of the year to be a top 3 album for me. But it does kind of sound to me like an Ian Anderson solo record. So what's the difference? I mean, Ian Anderson obviously controls Tull, always did, writes the songs, arranges them, produces them, arranges them, the whole thing. But when you listen to Ian Anderson solo, and these are Ian Anderson solo records that I just showed you briefly before, they have a different sound than Jethro Tull. Even the latter-day Tull albums, like, Roots to Branches or jtull.com. This was the last Tull official album, and a lot of people don't like it. But it still sounds like Tull. And what's the difference? Well, I think the keyboards are more prominent, but there's one aspect that on this album that I think is lacking to a certain extent, and that's the drumming. Tull has amazing drummers, whether it's Clive Bunker, Barrymore Barlow especially took the band to a whole nother level drumming-wise. Dawn Perry, you know, they just have a huge list of amazing drummers. I'm a drummer. Well, I was a drummer. And I'm what I call a meat and potatoes drummer. When it comes to classic Jethro Tull, I don't have the chops. There's no way that I could play, you know, stuff from Songs from the Wood or, you know, I mean, the drumming is amazing. So you have Ian Anderson who writes the songs as arrangements, but he puts them through this prism of Jethro Tull, which just blows it out, typically. And on this album and his other solo records, you don't really get that, in my opinion. You know, it seems like the musicians are much more afraid, they're more locked in to play exactly what Ian Anderson wants, and you really feel that, to me, on the Zealot Gene with the drumming. Not that the drumming's not good, it's fine, but it's understated. It doesn't have that Jethro Tull drumming sound. I mean, in all honesty, I could play the songs on this album, but there's no way I could play the songs on the classic Tull albums. So that's what the difference is. Does it really matter? Call it Tull, he's entitled. Does it sound like a Tull album? It does. It does. I mean, it's got the acoustic and it's got some progressive stuff. But Mine is the Mountain is a really good example because every Tull album to me, even the ones that are less good, let's say jtull.com, you know, I think the title track on this album, .com, is a phenomenal track. And there's a lot of really good tracks on this. Roots to Branches is loaded with what I would call classic tracks. You know, Stuck in the August Rain, Another Harry's Bar, At Last Forever. Those last three songs in a row are all amazing. And Beside Myself, if you have never heard Beside Myself, it's an unbelievable track. So why am I talking about these other albums? Because every Tull album, to me, pretty much, has this high. You know, they're all really good, but they have a song or a couple of songs that takes it to this other milestone thing. And this album, to me, to a certain extent, is kind of flat. There's a lot of albums that are really, really good. Every song on this album is really good. Really. But it doesn't have a high like those albums that I mentioned to. And this album is just as good as those albums. It's just that this album is steady. From beginning to end, it's just really, really good. And Mine is the Mountain, to me, is the track on here that really could have put it over the edge with a classic, you know. But it doesn't reach that point, in my opinion, because of the drumming. The drumming is just too muted. You know, Barrymore Barlow or Dawn Perry, you know, they would have taken it and it would have just took off, in my opinion. But it's still great. So overall, a great album. It's wonderful to have Jethro Tull back. To me, Ian Anderson, Jethro Tull, very similar at this point. Thick as a Brick 2 really is more progressive, and that really could have been a Tull album. But whatever. So overall, really good record. Like I said, I've probably heard it about 15 times at least. I'm a really big Tull fan. What do I have now officially? I'm looking at my numbers. I have 73 Tull albums and 9 Ian Anderson albums. So I think I'm a pretty big fan. You can see right back here, that's every album box set except Thick as a Brick I don't have. So I have every Tull album and sometimes multiple variations and bootlegs. This is a pleasure to have. I've heard it, like I said, 15 times or so, and I am not sick of it. It's a grower. If you're not a Tull fan, this is not an album that I would start with. Definitely not. You know, his voice is a lot older. It's fine on this album, you know, but he doesn't sing like he used to sing. This is not an album to get into Jethro Tull. You know, that's Songs from the Wood. That's Aqualung. That's Greatest Hits albums, things like that. Heavy Horses. But if you like Tull, definitely get this because it's excellent. So that's the Alan Rosenberg Show. I hope you enjoyed that. Go check out the Zealot Gene. There's some good videos out there. Shoshana Sleeping is a video. The Zealot Gene's a good riffy track. Mine is the Mountain. That's as close as a classic, I think, on this album. If you like acoustic Tull, check out Where Did Saturday Go? 3 Loves 3. Jacob's Tale with the harmonica is nice. It's all really good. Jethro Tull, the Zealot Gene. If you don't subscribe, please hit subscribe. Please check out my other videos. If you like Tull, check out my rant video. Why the fuck is Jethro Tull not in the Hall of Fame? #1 band should be in there right now. Thanks for tuning in, and have a great day.